I want to begin with some questions. How do we perceive social reality? I thought I'd start with some small questions here. What is objectivity? And in this age of empire, how do we arrive at the truth and still retain our sanity? These are some of the questions that inform this present inquiry. The usual criticism made about objectivity is that it doesn't exist. We're not just passive receptors sponging up images and information. Perception, as you know, involves selecting and omitting, organizing data into comprehensive forms. In other words, the act of perceiving something is itself an act of editing, which introduces certain kinds of distortions. There's that classical Walter Lippmann statement that he made 80 years ago. We don't see things and then define them. We define them first and then see them. But the mental selectors we use to organize our perceptions are not mostly of our own creation. Much of our personal perception is really not all that personal. Rather, it's shaped by a variety of things outside of ourselves, such as the dominant ideology, conventional social values, one's position in the social structure, the available flow of information and disinformation, the potential benefits and losses that are attached to such perceptions. There's Upton Sinclair's famous quotation where he said, "It's very difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it." Today, an analogous concept might be the dominant paradigm. The dominant paradigm means the mainstream ideology. And you see bumper stickers that say, "Subvert the dominant paradigm." And the dominant paradigm is based on a unanimity of bias. And that unanimity of bias is what passes for objectivity in mainstream discourse. Well, if objectivity is really little more than conformity of bias, then isn't one paradigm about as reliable or unreliable as another? Is all truth then nothing more than opinion or belief? If not, what makes a dissident, heterodox analysis better than an orthodox or mainstream one? Or do we lapse into a relativism which is, who's to say, you got your opinion, I got my opinion? Well, I would argue that, in fact, that's not where we're left. You can say that the dissenting opinion, the radical view, the views that are outside the mainstream, the views that are outside this unanimity of bias are generally, not always, but generally, are more reliable than the dominant view because they're more regularly challenged and tested against evidence. They don't get a free float down the mainstream. They're not supported by the unanimity of bias that passes for objectivity. Regarding orthodoxy, the most insidious oppressions are those that so insinuate themselves into the fabric of our lives and into the recesses of our minds that we don't even realize they're acting upon us. In the face of this, the heterodox view, the dissenting view, is not just another opinion among many. It has a special task to contest the prevailing orthodoxy, to broaden the boundaries of debate, to wake people up, to unearth suppressed data. The function of orthodox opinion is just the opposite, to keep the parameters of discourse as narrow as possible. Listen to a presidential press conference, for instance. To dismiss evidence that ill-fits the dominant paradigm. So all opinions are not of the same value. It depends on what they're being used for, what interests they serve. We've all observed that if something doesn't fit what people believe, they marshal up their reserved defenses and arguments, and sometimes very bitterly and very unyieldingly and unreceptively. It's called visiting relatives, right? Okay, how many have had this experience? You bring somebody up, no, not that experience, a new one. I mean, hands eagerly shoot up into the air. I want to describe for you an example like this. You meet someone who has a firm belief about something, and you give that person contradictory data. You say, but there's this, and they say, oh, well, in that case, given that contradictory evidence and that, I now surrender my beliefs and I embrace yours. Now raise your hand if that's happened to you. Okay, your laughter is the answer to my question. I taught, years ago, I guess it was about in the 80s, I taught at Cornell University for a year as a visiting professor, and I was teaching a communications class of upperclassmen, juniors and seniors, and somewhere about a third through the course, a couple of them complained and said, we're getting only one viewpoint in this class. And I said, well, no, we've got on the syllabus, we've got this reading, and I don't agree with this reading, and we discuss other questions. I said, but you know, you're right. And it was a course on the media. The perspective is very critical of the existing media that you have here. You're right. You're getting that point of view. It's true. It was a class of about 50 students. So I said, how many of you have had other social science courses, such as sociology, political science, economics, social psychology, anthropology, history, whatever, communications courses? And every hand went up. Everybody had at least 3 or 4 social science courses. I said, and how many of you in all those other courses got this point of view? Not a single hand went up. A measure of the ideological pluralism and diversity of Cornell University. And then I said, and how many of you in those other courses complained that you were getting only one point of view? In all those other courses that you took. Again, not a hand went up. I said, so you're not complaining that you're getting only one point of view. You're complaining that for the first time you're getting a second point of view, and you can't tolerate it.